Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the I'm on a Mission podcast. Hope you enjoy my better quality camera. It's starts out bad because my internet sucks, but first we talk about some NBA playoffs. Obviously, Heat in five. Then we go a little bit of hockey. RIP Panthers. They look like they suck really bad. And then we talk about the AFC West. They're a pretty cool division. So, Broncos 17-0, easy peasy. Welcome back, guys. It's fun to see you all again after that fun little introduction. But obviously, like how we always start off, we got some NBA playoff news in. So obviously, it's no longer, I guess, the playoffs, but it is the finals. And so we have Heat and the Nuggets tied 1-1 in this final series. See, I'm glad the Heat aren't getting swept and the Heat are actually playing half decent. But um, I guess, what did you see from the game that you liked?
The Heat are not winning in four. Sorry to tell you that. And love the merch,
Unfortunate.
by the way. The merch looks great. Um,
Thanks.
as you know, we're going to be talking about the AFC West later on. So, Corstian, as a true Broncos fan, pulled it off. He's wearing the Broncos jersey. Whose jersey is that, by the way?
It's
37?
Justin Simmons.
Justin Simmons. Great player. Great player.
Yeah,
Good jersey to get.
31.
And then
Yeah.
and he's got the hat as well. So he's a diehard Broncos fan. And we'll discuss them soon enough. But as for the finals, I think it's a very interesting chess match. One thing I did know from Game One is the Heat didn't have Jimmy Butler guarding Jamal Murray, and I thought that might be a method to stop the two-man action. And they did some interesting things alongside placing Jimmy Butler on Jamal Murray, which is really effective. Um, they play this like unique like shape shifting zone. It's not exactly like a 2-3 or a 3-2 zone if you're on 2K and you're toggling between zones like that. It's a little bit different than that. Sometimes they went 1-3-1, which is really interesting. And they're primarily trying to hurry up Murray to make quicker decisions and then force other Denver players to get out of rhythm. So like Michael Porter Jr. and like KCP, like where they get their normal rhythm threes. They're trying to disrupt the patterns, and I think that's an interesting philosophy. It's a great philosophy they've done. Um, so I think that's what led to um, the Heat winning this game. It was huge in the fourth quarter. Um, obviously, Jimmy played a lot better. Jokic always does his thing on the Denver side of it, and I think the four assists is a mirage. I don't think they figured out that if we make Joker pass it less, that it's going to make their offense less effective. I think it's the quality of the zone and the fact that Jimmy being on Murray that's really doing some things. But if I'm a Nuggets fan, I'd still be optimistic. Still, Michael Porter Jr., who's not shooting the ball well right now, but he's always been known for his great shot making from threes. His size is not going anywhere. His shot making is not going anywhere. He'll be better. He'll be better. I think KCP will be better as well. They could do a lot of different things to be better, and I think they let it slip on the way. So um, I still think this is going 6 or 7. I don't think anybody's figured each other out. It'll be interesting to see what Malone deciphers, but it's really the Nuggets got to get one, obviously, if they want to maintain that home field advantage. The Heat were huge in grabbing this one because it was a nip and tuck game, and it came down to the wire. Like if Murray hits that three, who knows what happens in overtime? So it's an interesting game. Lots to look forward to.
Yeah. And I think additionally on that top of that, having Kevin Love all of game two was really important for them. I think, has, I guess, playoff experience. He's guarded, I guess, elite talent throughout the league throughout his career, And so I think having him just back playing solid defense for the Heat was huge for them. Because obviously, game one, feel like the Heat were just kind of getting bullied over their size. And obviously they still do have the size disadvantage, but having him was a really good presence. I think Highsmith just kind of rotating in. He's a solid defender. I feel like he plays big, I
He's
feel,
underrated.
yeah. Whereas, you got like Struess and Caleb Martin, who are they're the same height as Highsmith, but I feel like, they play a little bit more quick and kind of, that perimeter ball, whereas Highsmith, he plays, I guess, more physically, which I think helps the Heat defense, I guess, do their best to try to match the size that the Nuggets have. But
Yeah, I think it's interesting because that's a great point you brought up with the Kevin Love. We're going back to that because in game one, what happened? Aaron Gordon was just killing smaller defenders. It was just like matching Aaron Gordon on somebody other than Jimmy Butler, and they were getting easy points to paint. So the Spurs was like, okay, let's at least have the size with somebody who's experienced at playing defense. And Kevin Love's got a lot better at defense over the years. A lot of people know him for like a 3-point specialist, but he's experienced now where he knows the tendencies and he just had to hold his own on the block. So I think that was huge for them. But yeah, no, you made some great points. Highsmith should be getting more minutes. I think he matches up well to like what Denver's trying to do to like the other role players. Like if you have Jimmy guarding somebody, maybe he could take on MPJ, or maybe he could spell Jimmy on Murray. And so there's a lot of interesting factors here. And obviously, Strus is not going to shoot as poorly as he did in game one, and he showed that in game two. So there's a lot to look forward to in the next upcoming games. I'm so excited for game three because I want to see if the Nuggets can steal one on the road. Or if the Heat suddenly go up 3-1, now we're talking about how the Nuggets lost it, and we'll see.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this series. Obviously, every time Butler's in the finals makes me happy, but kind of just more NBA stuff that happened. Obviously, some coach hirings happened around the league. Obviously, we kind of expected stuff to happen. Maybe you're surprised that it happened this quick, but obviously you have Monty Williams and Frank Vogel, but I'm kind of starting off with Monty Williams. I guess, do you like this pickup for the Pistons, or you think that he should have gone somewhere else? How are you feeling about it?
I love this move. Because if you remember, Monty Williams got hired when Phoenix was back in its rebuilding stage, and they were trying to figure out what to do with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges and Cameron Johnson. He definitely helped them develop as prospects. And I think the way Detroit's set up right now with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, Monty Williams can do that exact same formula that he did in Phoenix, just applied to different players, obviously, and different experiences. So while I didn't necessarily agree with the Dwayne Casey firing from the Detroit side, I don't think this is like a downgrade. So it's an automatic upgrade for the Detroit Pistons. And Monty Williams brings plenty of experience. I thought he was scapegoated, to be honest, from Phoenix. So look at that lineup. They're well deep in the point guard spot when you have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Corey Joseph. Jaden Ivey can also play the shooting guard position, so that helps. And then you have Alec Burks right behind him. Then you got Bojan Bogdanovic at the shooting forward spot. So you got the shooting. You got Marvin Bagley, the third, who's an underrated power forward, but he still has to prove himself. I think they're going to address that in the draft. We'll see. They do have the 5th overall pick, I believe. And then you have James Wiseman, who still has things to prove, and then Jalen Duren was pretty promising. So there's a lot to look forward to in the Pistons. I think they're going to go to the playoffs next year, just because like how that 7th and 8th seed in the East seems to evolve, and then they could sneak into the play-in as well. I could definitely see them somewhere between 7 and 10. So there's a lot to look forward to in the signing. Monty Williams is definitely a great coach.
Yeah. Obviously, Pistons to the finals next year. It's
the Monty
way.
What about your Heat? They're not going to repeat? What's going on over here?
Haslam retires. They take a little back step.
But what about Jimmy? Jimmy's still there.
No. Yeah. They got to show the Monty way. Monty is Monty.
In my honor.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, and like I said earlier, Frank Vogel also was hired just a little bit ago as the Phoenix Suns head coach, and obviously, you go from a deep playoff team with Monty Williams to him. So obviously he's he has a good history too. But what do you think about this?
I love this move for like where the Suns are. They're a very offensive firepower team. So if you look, obviously we know the top 4 names are going to be on the list. You have Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. Any 4 in that order. That's a superstar offensive 4 core in the NBA. So Then you got to look at their surrounding pieces. What do they have, and well, how can they supplement or complement what they have on the roster? So then I look at Josh Okogie and I look at Terrence Ross, Torrey Craig. Um, these are all like capable wing defenders, more so Okogie and Craig. Um, but they got some good pieces there. And then obviously Landale was a promising um, bench star in the playoffs when they lost to the Nuggets. And then you still got Biombo. So I think Vogel's going to do a lot of good things on the defensive end to help out Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in particular. We know the offense is going to be there for the Suns. It's just about that defensive identity. And you saw it against the Nuggets. They had no answers defensively for the Nuggets. That's why they lost the series. So um, good move. Good move. We'll see how it translates to like connecting with the players because even after winning a championship in LA, something was awry with the roster the way it was, and Frank Vogel got fired as a result. But he proved he's capable of winning a championship. So I think for the Suns, they played it safe. Good move. We'll see how the defensive coach affects this team.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good. It's like he's not on a rebuilding roster, so he's kind of, I guess, his model of when he has good players, he knows how to coach them. I feel like a lot of coaches feel like they could coach good players, but obviously, he has a history of doing actually good with good players on his team, and so, yeah, obviously, I don't know if there's a better hire or not, but I think this is a solid hire for the Suns as well. Just, it's a safe one. It kind of hires for the need, and I think that's a big part of what the Suns are looking for in the future. Just what was their weakness in this playoff run that they had, and they go and try to fix that in the form of coaching.
I absolutely agree. I think it was a need signing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think that's most of our NBA news. Obviously, NHL finals are going on too. It's a little bit more lopsided than the NBA ones right now, but yeah, it's not looking too hot for Florida right now, despite 2 more games needed for the Knights to win.
Yeah, I know. I was watching the game yesterday and providing insights on the Instagram stories. If you're not following along, follow us at amon.omission. I will put the Instagram channel at the end of the show as well and in the show notes. But the Vegas Golden Knights really running away with the series so far. And I don't know if it's a product of them playing at home and the home crowd getting into it, but I just tuned out after they were up 4-0. I'm like, they obviously had this game. Like there's no way I see the Florida Panthers winning at home when Vegas is at home rather, and it's odd to me because like both games, like Florida Panthers are doing a lot of good things. Like they're winning on the power plays favoring the Vegas Golden Knights. Like they scored a shorthanded goal. That was surprising to me because it's what a 4-on-5. One of your guys is in the penalty box and you're able to find a goal. So I'm like, okay, these guys can play. They can play with Vegas. But I just look at Vegas's passing and their touch, and it's absolutely extraordinary. And then Aiden Hill's making saves like god tier. It's crazy. But like Ashley though, like he is extending his limbs out there, like trying to prevent goals, and you got to respect that. You got to respect that. And I don't know what else I can say about like the Golden Knights. They're doing a lot of great things. Really disappointing the Florida Panthers because they're right there for the first 2 quarters, first 2 periods, and then like the third period they just lose their composure. So I think at this stage in the NHL Finals, you can't be doing that. Very disappointed in Matthew Tkachuk because he's the leader of that team. You expect him to play better and then also like be a standout professional, but it sucks to see it. We'll see how they do at home. We're not ruling them out just yet, but I think the Vegas Golden Knights are wrapping up the series.
Yeah. Yeah, and like obviously from like what I read at least, game 1, obviously Vegas had a solid win against the Panthers, but everyone was kind of saying that the score doesn't really tell the full story of the game, but after kind of seeing how game 2 ended up playing out, it really seems hard for the Panthers to just combat what Vegas has. And they're playing good, but it doesn't feel like the same team that we saw throughout the playoffs, just kind of upsetting, surprising, and just kind of dominating the other competition. And obviously I don't like I don't like Vegas, and so I always hope that they lose. But um, it's not looking super hot for the Panthers right now, and I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if this actually ended up in a sweep. Obviously,
I
crazy
think
stuff
so
has
too.
happened, but it's looking like it's going to be a sweep, despite the closeness of the close intensity of the games. Just the scoring just seems like Panthers have no answer to stop. So,
Yeah, because it's not just like one like Marshall Salt's obviously scoring a lot, and he's had like I think goals in like 11 straight games or something like that. Like it's insane. But like it's not just him. They're passing it around. Like they're like taking advantage of the fact that Florida's just not communicating on defense, where there's like two guys leaving the same zone, leaving somebody wide open. Um, and when that happens, when you're losing to an offensive powered team like that's playing like a team and playing cohesive, then it's a really tough ask to try and stop one guy or one or two people. So
mhm.
um, I think we both think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to win this series, but it was pretty fun to get there out there and break it down a little bit, and then also
Mhm.
see some hockey hits. Like I forgot how violent the sport can be, and it was actually pretty entertaining to see.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess now moving on, we got football. At the moment, everyone's been waiting for, minus probably NBA playoffs, but it's what I've been waiting for. And so, yeah, today we're doing the AFC West breakdown. First, we're going to kind of go over team records, and then we will then kind of do a more in-depth, depth chart analysis. And so, starting off, we're going to, I guess, go over what our predictions for the Kansas City Chiefs record will be. So I think Josh kind of has got that set up. Yep.
There, we got some visuals for you guys. So on the left side,
Yeah.
you have my predictions, what I think is going to happen each week. Then you got Corstian's predictions, what he thinks is going to happen each week. So fun stuff. Hope you guys enjoy the visuals. We'll try and break it down week by week because obviously we have some differences. Um, so let's take it away.
Yeah. So obviously, Kansas City, they're a strong team. I wish they'd lose more, but it's hard to it's hard to give them losses just looking at the schedule. But obviously, we both have them winning week 1 against the Lions. But week 2, we kind of have a difference. Do you want to talk about, I guess, our differences like as we go, or do you just want me to go through and you want to go through?
Yeah, but I think it's best to let's talk about where we differ because obviously there's more discussion that can be had from it. But I think this is more so of the Jaguars catching up to the elite tier of the AFC conference. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be in that conversation of elite QBs in that conference that you're going to have to be talking about if he's not already there. You saw signs of it last season when he had a competent offensive structure around him. And I think in year 2 in the Peterson offense, he's going to be really deadly, especially with the additions they made to the roster. Calvin Ridley is now their wide receiver 1. Tank Bigsby is going to add a lot to that roster. Travis Etienne, another year in that system. Um, there's a lot to like from what you see in the Jaguars. They had an underrated defense last year that they're only adding on to. Um, so I think they have enough what it takes, and then they can steal one against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I think that, the Jaguars, they're really close to being up there with the other elites of the league. I think this will be a high scoring game, but I just think that it may take the Jaguars, I like just a few weeks into the league, or into the season, to kind of find their rhythm, especially with Calvin Ridley just not playing for a while. And if you're expecting him to be that wide receiver 1 and you still don't 100% have that chemistry, might take a few weeks into the season before your offense is kind of fully flowing functionally that in the way that you're hoping for it to by the end of the season. It just kind of reminds me, or I guess I was kind of reminded of the Jaguars season last year where they kind of started off slow, but then kind of as the pieces fell into where they wanted them, they kind of just kicked it into high gear and kind of had a really strong end of the season. And I kind of see the Jaguars having a similar season like that. And yeah, and just doing great at the end, but maybe starting to get better earlier. Welcome to our Jaguars introduction, guys. But
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at where these teams ended off like last season, the Chiefs only won by a touchdown against them. Like Mahomes did suffer an ankle injury, but like it was a tightly contested game. Like, the talent level between like these two teams are right up there. And then if you look at the QBs, obviously Mahomes is one of the best QBs in the league, if not the best. Um, I think he and Burrow are neck and neck, and like in some areas, I think Burrow is better. But you cannot deny Patrick Mahomes is one of the best QBs there is right now. I think this is more of a conversation where Trevor Lawrence is in that discussion with the Justin Herberts, the Josh Allens when we see this next season approaching. Obviously, Joe Burrow can't forget to mention him. Um, and I think that gap is closed by the Jaguars. And I think this is the case where it's like a classic trapdoor game for the Chiefs. They're on the road against Jacksonville, their first road game of the season. I think they will be tested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think overall though, I think Jaguars will be phenomenal, especially for the next couple of years. But yeah, this happens, and obviously these are just our initial predictions based off the offseason, so probably not going to go super in depth on, I guess, just the records here, and then we'll kind of talk more so about how we feel like the team is, or the team's current standing is, when we kind of look at their depth charts a little bit more. But yeah, next we both got them beating the Bears, unfortunately for you. But then we kind of have a difference with the Jets again, where I have them beating the Jets, you have them losing. My reasoning is kind of similar just to the Jaguars, where it might take Aaron Rodgers and everybody to kind of a week or two to gel, and against tougher competition like the Chiefs, it might just be one of those games that are harder to play. Whereas I don't know exactly how the Jets' beginning of the schedule is, but they might, I feel like they'll dominate easy teams, so it'll be kind of harder for tough teams.
Yeah, no, I said two different contradicting things there. Kansas City's on the road against the Jets in this scenario as well. So I think this is more a product where I look at the defensive talent of the Jets. They're coached by Robert Saleh. And then with the addition of Aaron Rodgers, I think the Jets are one of those teams that are also going to be on the lead tier of the AFC conference on paper. And I think with the Jets being at home, this is going to be a challenge for the Kansas City Chiefs as well. So I can easily see a situation where they're 2-2, but I would not be surprised if they end up 4-1 from 4-0 from this stretch of games like you have them.
Yeah, and then the next week, obviously, we have another difference of the records. I just think that the Vikings, obviously, I don't think they're the strongest team in the league, but for whatever reason, they just have those like random games of just pure dominance. And I'm just saying this is one of those one-off games for the Vikings that they're just unstoppable. But
really.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them lose, but for whatever reason, every once in a while they just have that crazy game of, for whatever reason, if they played in the playoffs like this, they would literally be the best team in the league, but it's not consistent enough, so it's hard. But
I think for me, if this is like a close game between these two, because they do have the talent, like the talent level is like pretty much right there. Like if you're looking at everything else, I just think the difference in QB talent level is the difference. And then obviously the Vikings have some. They need to prove that their defense has upgraded from last year. So I think they have a couple of questions. And then I'm just not a believer that Kirk Cousins is ever going to be on that elite tier of QBs just by watching him on film. So I think when it comes close, when the game comes down to the wire, the Vikings are going to lose to the Chiefs.
Yeah. Additionally, I don't think I could put in my Denver Broncos heart to give the Chiefs a 7-0 start. So I had to make sure to give them a tough loss somewhere in the middle. But
I will preface this by saying, coming up with these schedules, Corstian had the Denver Broncos going 17-0 on the spreadsheet. And I saw two different records, and I was like, let's go with the more unreasonable one, where they turn out to be 10-7. So a little spoiler there on Corstian's picks there, but
but
unfortunately, I don't see the Broncos beating the Chiefs. But who knows? They could upset them, especially with Coach Payton now in the helm.
Yeah, Broncos, we're winning until we're not. It's as simple as that.
Solid reasoning.
Yeah, but obviously here, we have the Chiefs winning their next two games. Obviously, I'm a Broncos truther. I'm always going to root for the Broncos. I think the Chiefs. So with the Broncos, obviously, you think the Chiefs are going to beat the Broncos. And the Fins going to the bye. We have them both losing to the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles are a phenomenal team, winning against the Raiders. I hate the Raiders so much. And then we have them both beating the Green Bay Packers, losing to Bills. Beat the Patriots, beat the Raiders again. Yeah, screw those Raiders. Then we have our difference with the Bengals, and I just think I think this one just like another one of those where it really can go either way. I think probably what your thoughts are too, but
Yeah, I think you're freezing up a little bit there. I see your computer's freezing now, so we'll try and get Corstian back on as soon as possible. But as far as um, Kansas City losing to the Cincinnati, I just think it's a standpoint where Cincinnati's right up there. They've been chomping at the bit. They've had the Chiefs number before. The championship game lost to them, and if you even look at the championship game, um, the two teams are drawing back and forth. And I just look at both these two teams, and I don't think there's much of a difference. And I think in some instances, Burrow has that killer instinct where not necessarily Patrick Mahomes does not, but I just think he can pull out wins where normal QBs cannot, and especially this late in the year. I think it will be the difference. Let me see if Cincinnati's at home or on the road. This is a home game for the Chiefs, so um, I totally understand why you would have them beating the Bengals. I just think the Bengals are too good offensively for the Chiefs to stop, and they're underrated defensively where they can stop the Chiefs' offense. So they have given them fits, especially Anarumo. He has a Chiefs number. There he is.
I'm
There
back
you are.
again.
He's
Wi-Fi
alive. He's
difficulties
alive.
instead of PC crashing difficulties this time. So, but yeah, I heard bits and parts of what you were saying. Oh, did I don't know if I crashed or not, but I see you moving, so I think we're chilling.
Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, and then so yeah, I agree. You know, it's I don't know. I was listening to in and out of what you said, but and then we have the Chiefs losing.
Let's start
to
with your
the
reasoning. Why do you think the Chiefs are beating the Bengals?
Yeah, so I think you said that too, like or mentioned this earlier, but you know, I think this is a home game for the Chiefs, was it not?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
It
so
is
it's
a home
that,
game.
and then um obviously I mean both teams are strong elite teams, and um I think it really could go anyway. Then I think I don't know, the Chiefs just can win these games, and especially like at least for me, you know, I have them losing against other elite competition in the league, and I don't think that they just lose to every good team, and so you know, and so I think that out of I think one of the games, you know, between the Eagles, Bills, and Bengals, they'll probably pull out one, maybe two wins out of that, and probably lose one of them. So I think that Bengals are a winnable game for them, and that's how I went about it.
It's definitely winnable. I'm just going with the standpoint where I think the Bengals are better this season than they have what it takes.
Hmm. Yep. And then now
Depth chart
going
time.
on. Yep. Depth chart time.
Okay. I'm gonna pull up the Kansas City offense. Let me know what your thoughts are because I certainly have a lot.
Yeah. So obviously, Kansas City, they have Patrick Mahomes, literally the best quarterback in the league right now. If he continues the way he plays, he could be one of the best of all time. And I think that's just, you know, like the staple. Him and Travis Kelce are just the staples of this offense. And I think as long as those two are on the team, most of the rest of the team doesn't really matter as much. Obviously, O-line is a huge factor. I mean, we saw their a weak O-line a couple Super Bowls ago cost them basically a Super Bowl. But, you know, they still have a lot of talent here with getting Juwan Taylor from the Jaguars. He's an elite talent. It was one of the guys I wanted for the Broncos, actually, but obviously they paid him a bunch of money, and the Broncos didn't want to spend that much on the right tackle position. So you have that. But then Creed Humphrey, you know, he's one of the best centers in the league, if not the best center. But you have that, and then you have a lot of, I guess, this current mid-tier level of wide receivers, and I think that's just kind of the Chiefs' current standard for their wide receivers. Obviously, you hope that one of these guys does break out of the mold of, I guess, their middling set of receivers. And I know you like Kadarius Toney. I like Kadarius Toney. I think he has that potential to play as that wide receiver one for the Chiefs. But you know, you kind of see it even like with drafting Rashee Rice. Richie James, who's again another middling talent for them, but it's a lot of guys that are really good role players, at least on an offense. And I think that's when you have Travis Kelce as, I guess, your staple playmaker, you're able to not have to, I guess, worry as much as your wide receivers. And then running back, you have Isaiah Pacheco, who he played great last year. I don't think he takes a step back, at least this year. And I don't know what the future plans are with him, but I think overall this team, they know what they're doing on offense, and that's why they win.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Super Bowl winning roster. There's a reason why they won. I want to see how Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor are integrated in that offense, because there are a lot of problems with Donovan Smith on Tampa Bay. Like, I'd seen him get beat a lot, and it certainly didn't help Tom Brady in that offense when they were struggling to find some rhythm and find some ground during a tough season for them. I know you mentioned you like Blake Bell a lot when we were talking about what our take was on the Chiefs skill position players heading into next season. I just think that tight end room is like super deep to the point where they're not going to be relying on him that often, given that they do have Kelce. So the same thing with their receivers. They're going to be rotating a lot between the receivers and the tight ends, and I think they're fine with that. I think that's the main reason why they're not going after Hopkins. Now, would I be surprised if Hopkins signs with a team? No. Do I want it to happen? No. But
either.
Yeah, it would be bad for the rest of the AFC West and the AFC Conference and the NFL.
Bad for the rest of the NFL, man.
Yeah, they got 2 number 1 wide receivers on the team now. It's crazy. But I definitely think Tony has what it takes to prove he's a wide receiver 1 based on his talent. Obviously, the only question is injury. Are you really fine with Isaiah Pacheco as your running back 1? Because I know we discussed this, and you had your thoughts. I know off air you're like, I don't know about Pacheco as their starter, but what do you think about the rest of that running back team?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Pacheco, he played really good football last season. Beating out basically Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He played awful. I mean, Helaire still had first round, draft capital, and I mean, the main concern of Pacheco is obviously his draft capital. I mean, you just look historically at running backs in the NFL, and there's a very small amount of guys that are drafted day 3 that remain starters on teams multiple seasons. I think you have to go back you got to go back to almost Arian Foster to see guys that last past their initial contract as a starting running back. And while Pacheco has played good, obviously he does have his weaknesses in pass protection, and obviously that's a huge deal, and that's why he didn't go super high in his draft class in the first place. And so I think that he is a good runner. He's a phenomenal runner, but I think running backs that struggle with pass protection do get phased out pretty quick, and that's just my own opinion there. Obviously, Jerick McKinnon, he played phenomenally last season as, kind of a third down change of pace back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, unfortunate. And then Michael Pirine. I see him in Madden here and there, but I don't really know much about him.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I don't watch him much either. I've heard he had some promises rookie year, but I didn't pay attention to him that much.
Yeah, I think he started out with the Jets, and he got released from the Jets, I think, or when they still sucked. And so obviously when you have that kind of talent, it's not super hot. It's not a super hot commodity, but again, it's the number 4 running back on a roster. I don't think they really see too much time unless obviously injuries happen, but yeah, it's kind of
and obviously if they ever need to adjust running back, the list of free agents is deep enough where you can find someone to fill their role. I'm not saying there's elite players out there. There are. If they suddenly want to sign Kareem Hunt and bring him back to the team for some reason, that's an option. But one name I do want to talk about among the wide receivers is Justin Ross. He was one of my sleepers in the 2021 class. Sorry, 2022 wide receiver class. And I wanted the Bears to grab him so badly, but he's been dealing with foot injuries his entire college career and after college. So he never really got a chance to shine. So he was signed by the Chiefs as an undrafted free agent. And now you're hearing some buzz about him. I would not be surprised if he's the wide receiver 2 on this team ahead of Sky Moore. He is that talented. I can definitely see him beating out Marcus Valdez-Scantling because he was one of he was one of the top weapons for Justin. It's not Justin Fields. I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence. When he was at Clemson, he was one of the top receivers for Trevor Lawrence. And Patrick Mahomes is capable of throwing it on the boundary. He can throw it anywhere, for God's sake. So, um, Justin Ross, just a name to keep out there. He's a deep, deep sleeper, but I would not be surprised by midseason if he's starting opposite Tony.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think just the big issue is, like, can he play more than a season? You know, can he even play a whole season? Is like
it's the same deal with Tony. It's the same deal with Tony.
Yeah, but I think it's even a bigger concern than Tony's, I guess, injury bug concern, just because there's a reason why Ross went undrafted. Obviously, the talent was there, and it just like can he even last a game. You know, that's like the talk everybody has. Can he even last a single game of like a pro NFL game these days? And I hope that he can, but obviously, I feel like he's just going to be a depth option in hopes that he can hopefully return to form, but I think it's somewhat unlikely, especially just the guys that you bring in, the guys that you drafted, and obviously, you know, every year there's a new class of phenomenal receivers that you can pull from, and as you get older, it just kind of gets harder and harder to, you know, break into that, especially when there's younger guys that do just what you do or better.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You hate to see people that talented get hurt that often, but we'll see. We'll see. Well, we hope that the preparation he does off season and the training, strength and conditioning trainers he has for him, really make a huge difference for
him. Yeah. But that's kind of, I guess, most of our stuff for the offense, and now kind of going to the Chiefs defense. Obviously, it's not necessarily as fun as the offense with Patrick Mahomes, but they do have a really good defense. I think notably, you know, their linebacker core has been pretty strong. I feel like it's an underrated unit, especially with Nick Bolton just kind of, I guess, leading it at middle linebacker. He's, you know, a guy that I'd look out for. And obviously they have talented cornerback or talented secondary, I guess, as a whole. Obviously, again, it's not the most elite, but, you know, when you have like L'Jarius Sneed, who plays surprisingly good, you know, it's a really nice defense to look at. You lost Frank Clark in the offseason, but I think that they filled those gaps pretty well. And again, Chris Jones is kind of the focal point of that defensive line.
Yeah. I think this is an underrated unit. When we were talking about the Bengals season, I would not be surprised if the Chiefs win this because, like, win that game against them, even though I picked the Bengals. Because you look at their linebacking core, it's deep. If you look at their cornerback, it's deep. And they just addressed the defensive ends in the draft. Previous 2 years, like 2022 is Karlaftis. This year was Amenahu. And they added a lot more defensive ends. And I'm looking at this roster. It's really, especially like the slot linebacker, the side linebacker. When you have Drew Tranquil and then Luke Chanel, who I'm pretty high on from the draft, these are really good picks. Like Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams stepped up huge in the championship game, and they're only going to get better from rookie seasons.
Yeah.
You love to see Lamar Jackson, the cornerback on the Chiefs. That's pretty funny. But yeah, this is like the top 11 they have right now is really good. It's just a question of can that depth like prove to rise to the occasion when injuries strike? Because who knows in the NFL? Everything looks great on paper right now, but you have to see if these rookies can hold up for a full season. But they did a great job in the draft, like providing the personnel here.
Yeah. And I do think that is kind of just a strong point, though, is there's depth, I guess, that they have on defense. I mean, like, I feel like because you look at their defense, and obviously, you know, guys like Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed and Nick Bolton are, you know, elite, talked about talent, but then I feel like outside of that, you're just like, oh, like, I feel like your average fan doesn't necessarily know about a lot of these guys. And but when you look at the roster, you do see that it's deeper, and that when you need guys to rotate in or due to injury or just, you know, rotating throughout the game, I think that is one of the strong suits that this defense has.
Yeah, they can go nickel, like with the 4 cornerbacks they have, like McDuffie, Williams, Sneed, Watson. They can go nickel, dime without losing a beat. I think my only question is Brian Cook. Like, how well does he fit into that roster? And if he falters, then Mike Edwards was a really good player for Tampa Bay. So, yeah, like Deion Bush like had his moments on the Bears. I wouldn't necessarily call him a starter, but like as a reserve, he's pretty good. So a lot to like about this defense. You would like to see them continue to add this over the coming years, and like as the third wave of free agents comes up. But great roster, top to bottom.
Yeah. And now I guess we kind of just go on to our next team, which I think is the Denver Broncos.
Is that a team you like? Just trying to check real quick.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
I can't tell with all the jerseys. And
I actually don't watch any football.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna remove the banner real quick so we can take a look at the full record here.
Yeah, and obviously Broncos are gonna go undefeated, but that wouldn't make for as entertaining content. So I had to dip a few losses here and there just to make it so you guys don't cry and complain and say I'm super biased, because obviously I'm not a biased Broncos fan. I'm realistic, but
we have to pick the most unreasonable record, like out of the two you had. So we went with the unreasonable 10-7. So
right, how to spur some drama, but
yeah,
obviously, I have the Broncos winning week 1 against the Raiders. Hate the Raiders, don't like them, so obviously that's why they're gonna lose. Also, Josh McDaniels, awful coach. He's awful.
He knows firsthand, people. He knows firsthand.
Yeah, in all honesty, Jimmy Garoppolo might not even play for the Raiders. Like, he did pass that physical, so again, loss. But going on to the next part of the schedule, we both have them beating the Washington football team Commanders. And then we have a Dolphins loss, unfortunately. Obviously, they should win this game, but we have them losing here. And then obviously I have to say the Broncos beat the Bears, because Bears are garbage and will never amount to anything, despite how great of talent they might have on the roster. But I guess
that is utterly ridiculous. You're trying to gaslight me right now. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I guess Josh has a different opinion on how the Bears season will end, but obviously,
I honestly think they're going 17-0 as well. Even though they're facing each other week 4, the Broncos and the Bears are both going to go 17-0, and everything will be fine and perfect.
Yeah, obviously the L on the Bears side there is for our grade on Josh's opinion. It's an L opinion, and so moving on to the Jets, we have.
The only L that's going to occur is week 4, Bill, when you lose the Bears. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But fortunately, I had to say the Jets beat the Broncos. It's not a good look, but we also have the Chiefs beating the Broncos. Again, not a good look. I put the Packers to beat the Broncos, which again is not a good look, but I guess you have them beating the Packers. Any thoughts as to that? Or is it just because you hate the Packers?
There's a little bit where I hate the Packers, especially the recent moves they made. But as a lifelong Bears fan, I have to always say they lose to teams. But in actuality, it's a pretty rough stretch for the Broncos once you get to week 5 onward. I'm pretty optimistic about the Bears, to be honest, coming this season. I think they made a lot of good moves where they're a team on the rise. And I think with the Broncos having a new coach in Peyton, it's going to take a little bit of adjustments. Like, the talent and the personnel is there, but we really need to see, was it a mirage that Russell Wilson struggled, or is he actually struggling in the offensive system? So there's some questions that need to be answered on that front. But with the Green Bay side, I actually had the Broncos winning because we don't know about Jordan Love. He's completely unproven. They made a lot of good moves on the personnel. They had a really good defense last year, but if the quarterback's not up to snuff, then it really doesn't matter. Like, I'm a Bears fan. Take it from me. Like, we were 12-4 with Trubisky. I thought everything was fine and dandy, and then the quarterback was the limiting part of our roster. I respect Trubisky so much, but if we had a better quarterback, I feel like we could have got much farther. So here I'm saying I think Jordan Love is average at best. this upcoming season, and that's not going to be good enough to beat a Broncos team full of talent.
Yeah, and I feel like the Packers are a big wild card team this year. Jordan Love, he doesn't play good. Obviously, that's a very likely scenario. But again, he's sat behind Rodgers for a couple of years and now has full reins to the offense. So for all we know, he could be the next Mahomes. Imagine that. Jordan Love, the next Mahomes-esque quarterback in the league.
Stop it.
Finally give the NFC some competition at like the quarterback position, because you got like Jalen Hurts and Kirk Cousins as your like top two quarterbacks in the NFC right now or something. But we can go more into our quarterback rankings some other time.
I will say that the Broncos are at home too, so I think it would be even more advantageous when we don't really know what the outlook is for these two teams until we see them in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the home team, to be honest. But like I've been saying this whole time, if Jordan Love becomes the next like psycho QB that becomes a Hall of Fame great for the Packers, I will quit watching football. I'm 100% shaking my hands on that. I'm obviously still probably going to watch football just because I despise him so much and I pray on his downfall because he's on the Packers. But we hope the best for him. We just don't know. We just don't know between this matchup. So that one was a real I don't really mind that you said that the Broncos would lose the Packers. We really don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I guess going on to the next week, we have I have the Broncos beating Kansas City. I can't have another sweep of KC over the Broncos. And regardless of how the Broncos look, I'll always have them at least splitting or doing better. And so there's no shot in this entire world that I would have Kansas City beating the Broncos twice. I understand your reasoning behind it without even listening to your reasoning, but that's what my reasoning is going to be. And then I have the Broncos, they had that fantastic win against KC and carry some momentum against Buffalo. I don't know if it's home or away still in my head because I don't remember the schedule off the top of my head that way. But carry that momentum into Buffalo.
In Buffalo. They're going to be in Buffalo.
Win, easy dubs. And then they go against
after beating the Chiefs. Oh my goodness. Look at this rational take right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I already have the Broncos going 17-0. This is just like
all right, so we're back. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're still thriving. We're still surviving. We're alive. We're all good. Yeah, that's what I was doing. I was like, "Where's Corstian? Where's Corstian?" But we're all here now. So like I explained to the people, I thought Kansas City and Buffalo are both going to be losses for the Broncos, just purely from a talent perspective. I think, especially in the QB-driven league, like the difference in talent, even if Russell Wilson rebounds, is not comparable to Mahomes or Allen. So that played a role in me picking losses, especially when Denver's coming off the road after a bye where they're facing Buffalo. I think that's going to be a loss. But I was interested to see why he had the Broncos losing to the Lions, because I don't see it that way. Well, what's your reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I feel like this is just another one of those, I guess, in my opinion, toss-up games for the Broncos, where the Lions have just kind of surprisingly been just a good team to go against. They play good football. They play fundamentally sound, I think. And I think it's just like one of those tough losses that just happened. And I think and I think that the Lions are just fully capable of beating teams, especially, they had a good offseason. I mean, obviously, Jameson Williams, his ordeal stuff is unfortunate for them. But at this stage, I guess you technically have him. And then, I think Lions kind of kick things into gear as the season goes on. And they're another one of those teams that I think that may start off slow, but finish really, really strong. And so that's why I have the Lions potentially being one of those teams that do beat the Broncos.
Yeah. And to your point, the Broncos are on the road in this game. So I think that plays a role into it. But that might be the deciding factor between the differences. Oh, no. I think you have them going 10-7, but actually think you're going to go 17-0, while I have them going 9-8. So we'll see how this all turns out. Let's take a look at their depth chart, starting with their offense, because they have a lot of quality wide receivers that I really like, especially when they picked up Marvin Mims from the draft. But I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, wow, it's like I'm looking at like some of the best 30 players in the league right now. Like that's crazy. I didn't
Okay,
even know
scratch
all.
that. Let's honestly look at this roster.
um, yeah, going to receiver, I think it's a really mixed bag of players here. Because there is really high potential with this receiver core, but um, I think obviously Jerry Jeudy, he's finished off last season really strong. And if he can't continue that, obviously, you have a superstar, wide receiver one out of that. But like hypothetically, you could say, oh, Jerry Jeudy's superstar end of the season might have just been a fluke. And he kind of reverts back to how he's been the rest of his career with the Broncos. Cortland Sutton, he had that really good season before he tore his ACL or whatever. And seems like he hasn't gotten back 100%, but recovering from injury does take time. And so, you're hoping this might be the year that Cortland Sutton plays good football again. And then Tim Patrick kind of falls under that same thing of he just suffered, a knee injury. Obviously, players like Cooper Kupp have come back more explosive than ever. But, Tim Patrick, it's like, I know he's a really great, I guess, jump ball kind of guy where his hands are just phenomenal, but and he doesn't necessarily rely on elite route running. But, it's like he is an older-ish receiver, and so how much does he take a step back just recovering from injury? And so it's a lot of just question marks around this offense in regards to their wide receiver talent. Obviously, I think KJ Hamler's probably on the way out pretty soon, just with the way the Broncos have built the receiver room. They drafted Marvin Mims. They traded up for him. And I think that this offense in the next 2 years or so might be Jerry Jeudy and the Marvin Mims show. And most of the rest of the guys could maybe not even be on this team. And so obviously I do believe in the highest potential that this Broncos wide receiver core has, but just the way, they drafted and how these players played last season, it could mean a lot of kind of just shifting players around.
Yeah, I have two thoughts. I'm going to dive a little bit away from the wide receivers. Just a quick side note. I think they built really strong depth with Marcus Callaway and Marvin Mims and LaJordan Humphrey, just in case like Patrick or Hamler go down with injuries again. So I think they're set there. Key thing is how does Javonte Williams come back from injury, because they also lost him to an ACL, I believe. And I think Samaje Perine is a capable starting back, so I think the fact they got him in free agency is really good. Tyler Beatty was really underrated coming out of the draft, so we'll see how he turns up, if he turns up being a key contributor. I was a little bit surprised to let go of Chase Edmonds, but that happens. I don't think he's the focal point of what they need on offense when you got Russell Wilson who wants to push it down the field.
Mm-hmm.
The other thought I had was the tight end room, because I actually don't think the starting tight end is the best tight end on this roster in terms of talent. I think it's Adam Troutman. And this is coming from a guy who touted Okwuegbunam as like the tight end to watch last year, and that did not turn out well. Who knows? Maybe it was Hackett, maybe it was him. I have no idea what happened. But Troutman has always had the talent. I think when he was stuck on the Saints with like no exact QB and like the more of the focal points of the wide receivers, he didn't really get to showcase that. But he's a really good tight end, really good receiving tight end. He flashed at Dayton. I wouldn't be surprised if he's starting by midseason.
Yeah, I don't think Adam Troutman's that good. I mean, you just look at the tight ends ahead of him. BC was also number 3 tight end on that Saints roster.
Yeah,
you got Juwan Johnson, you got Taysom Hill, who isn't even technically like an original tight end. Beat him out, and I think it just the main reason they brought him on was just because he was part of the Sean Payton era of draft selection. Yeah, but you look at like the capital that the Broncos gave up to get him in the first place versus, you got Greg Dulcich, who he's moderately high capital for a tight end, and you got Albert Okwuegbunam, who everyone was talking about as, the easy replacement for Noah Fant. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett seemed to just hate his guts because he never played him. And I mean, I guess we got to see Greg Dulcich play pretty good football. But yeah, I know there's a lot of talk about Greg Dulcich going into next season as well, just as kind of maybe a potential X factor for that Broncos offense. And if, he can just dominate the league as a tight end, that obviously changes the whole landscape for that offense. Yeah, and then obviously we saw Albert Akweyibanam at the end of the season when Hackett was fired. He played in a little bit, and I think he scored a touchdown in one of the last 2 games. And, he had looks on the offense, which I was excited about. And I think, well, Adam Troutman is, I guess, like a sound technical tight end. I guess he doesn't offer, potential elites in any metrics that I'd be looking for. As in, you have Albert Akweyibanam, who's obviously he's a fast player. He had a great 40 time. He's potentially, they thought he was the easy replacement for Noah Fant. And then Greg Dulcich, I think, he had a handful of splash plays that I don't think you necessarily get from Adam Troutman. I feel like he is more of a, I guess, possession type player where, he just can slowly move the chains, like as an easy check down option, whereas you see a lot more big plays come from Dulcich and Akweyibanam.
Yeah, you make some great points there. It's but Troutman is really just a potential thing. Like he has the talent to overtake both of them, but what realistically might happen with this tight end room is it might be a tight end by committee where they'll be using them by situation, like similar to what the Chiefs do, like once you look past Kelsey. So that's the case in what happened with the Saints. They would use like Juwan Johnson as mainly like the red zone threat, and they would use Adam Troutman as like trying to move the chains type tight end, and then Taysom Hill is your gadget option. So they could do something similar with these tight end groups, use them in different situations based on route combinations. The 2 guys I also really like on this roster is Jared Stidham. I think they now have a really good quarterback who could just execute the system. Think of anything in that mess of a Las Vegas season. Like he proved he can just execute the system and make Derek Carr look expendable because of that, which is crazy to me. And Alex Forsythe, I think he was a really good center they got at the end of the draft, and he's going to be like a quality depth piece that they'll need as the season progresses.
Yeah, I really liked just overall the Broncos offseason moves. I mean, obviously, you got a coach, you get a solid backup option. Brad Rippon, obviously, while he, I guess, was kind of a fan favorite, it just seems like he wasn't that good. It seemed like the Broncos were almost hoping that they could just bring him on as a coach. He's a smart player. He just, I guess, wasn't great at executing things at times. Similar to kind of Kellen Moore, I guess, how he played some football, but he obviously has excelled as an offensive coordinator. And I think that might be a career path that Brett Rippon goes down. But obviously, Broncos made huge moves on the offensive line with Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers. I'm super
mad at that McGlinchey signing. I'm so tilted.
Yeah, and obviously, like I said, I wanted Juwan. Oh my gosh,
Juwan Taylor.
Juwan Taylor. There's the other Juwan that the Broncos signed as a right tackle a few years ago. That was absolutely awful. Just brings nightmares thinking of the name Juwan at right tackle. Maybe that's why they didn't go for him. But I think, Mike McGlinchey, he was a solid, I guess, just other option at the right tackle position. It's been a revolving door for the Broncos. It's really just sucked as a position for the Broncos. And I think just having some stability of a player in that spot is just a huge, I guess, plus for the Broncos. And then Ben Powers, obviously, he had a phenomenal year last year. I think he's one of the most underrated pickups that the Broncos had this offseason. I'm really excited to see how he plays. See, Lloyd Cushenberry, I don't think is that good. He's, again, one of those guys that's like, I guess, technically sound, but just isn't as physical as you'd hope that he could be, especially coming from the famous LSU year that literally everybody was getting drafted. But yeah, and then Quinn Miners, obviously he's played really great football. Really got the Broncos drafted the gut. He's a good guy. I like him.
It sounds like it's a good move for the offensive line. I don't know too much. I know Garrett Bowles has been like rock solid. Mike McGlinchey is one of the elite tackles from the 49ers. that like everybody was trying to get. I was hoping the Bears would get him. They didn't end up getting him.
Mhm.
But yeah, they heavily invested in the offensive line. They wanted to make that a focal point, especially when you have a shorter stature quarterback. That's really important to make sure he's locked up well, so you can utilize that space and timing better. Um, let's shift towards the defensive end because I actually want to take a look at their depth chart and see how everything looks. Obviously, we know how much attention you pay to it, given the Justin Simmons jersey that you have
Yeah.
there. So he's a rock solid player. Pastor Tam, one of the lead cornerbacks of the game. They did make a good move in getting Zach Allen from free agency, but I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think of the defense? Do you think they're going to improve from last year?
Yeah, I think the defense
No, no.
is looking good. I feel like they were finding part of their identity last season just as a defense. Oh, are you
We
good?
got you. We got you. We got you now.
Okay, okay. Yeah, but you got guys basically coming back healthy. I feel like a big weakness of the Broncos over the past like 6 years was like a rotating middle linebacker like segment or whatever. And now I feel like the Broncos, they got four solid guys that you hope that can play Serbies. Going into last season, the whole like everyone was expecting Josie Jewell and Jonas Griffith as their two starting middle linebackers, and then Griffith gets hurt early on in the season, and Singleton comes in and is just a tackle machine. He's not great in coverage, but he got slightly better throughout the season. So I really like the depth there. Obviously, I think the weakness is the pass rush still. See, Baron Browning, he's played solid, but he's a developing player. Nick Bonito, he's a good pass rusher. It just he is not that great at anything else, and so you really hope that he develops to kind of take that next step for the Broncos, especially as a second round draft pick. Low-key kind of just feel that after last season, with just limited play time, and I mean, there's obviously reason for that, but hopefully it's not another one of those Shane Ray situations where just can't seem to figure out what he needs to do, to get better. Randy Gregory, he played good last season when he was in, so hopefully, he stays healthy. Jonathan Cooper's a good backup. I really like the Broncos secondary, though. It's in my opinion, it's probably the strongest part of this defense. Obviously, Pat Surtain. You could argue he might be the best cornerback in the league. He's obviously, in my opinion, the best, but I think a lot of people put him in that top 3, top 5 range for cornerbacks in the league. And
I agree with that.
we saw him lock down just a bunch of elite talent last season, and he really stepped up to the challenge. Damari Mathis, he started off kind of rough in the season, but as the season progressed, we kind of saw him take strides in his cornerback game. He was able to lock down number twos a lot of the time, and he was making plays. Quan Williams is back healthy again this season, and he's a phenomenal slot corner. They got him from San Francisco a year ago, and obviously, I think Broncos were just riddled with injuries last season, and it kind of made it hard to see what the full potential of this team was. And so it'll be exciting to kind of see how the Broncos kickstart this year. Riley Moss, again, was another draft pick. Apparently he has really good ball skills, and so I'm excited to see if the Broncos get more turnovers. But surprised that Kareem Jackson came back. He's obviously older, but I think there's going to be a lot of rotating between him and Caden Stearns, because when we've seen Caden Stearns play, he's played really good football. Just injuries plus Kareem Jackson's just a great veteran presence on that team that I think is needed.
Yeah, you made a lot of great points there. I'm also a fan of Caden Stearns' game, so I could see him starting a strong safety sometime down the line. We talked about Drew Sanders when we were discussing the draft as a really good linebacker that should be picked in the first or second round, but he might be a later day 2 pick. And I think him like playing behind Josie Jewell is going to be amazing for that team. Um, I pretty much agree with you on the defensive line. Like I'm looking at it now, and I could see why they invested in Zach Allen because there's not much there where I'm confident in. Like I know Mike Purcell and DJ Jones are going to be solid pieces, solid depth pieces, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know anything about Henningsen, and that kind of worries me a little bit. If I on what his talent level's like, so we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. That would be probably my go-to pick. If not, trying to figure out if Damari Mathis is the starting quarterback outside of Patrick Surtain. But there's a lot of promising pieces here. They just need more depth on the defensive line. And I think this defense is starting to trend towards being elite again.
Yeah, I was looking up Matt Henningsen. Just kind of seeing the vibes. He's a really young player, so obviously it makes sense that you're trying to get him to develop. But honestly, just looking at the Broncos roster, it looks like I'm back.
Can you hear me? Okay,
I'm alive again. Yes.
All right. We'll work through this as best as we can. But any thoughts on the special teams before we move forward?
Obviously the Broncos, they got rid of Brandon McManus this offseason. It's unfortunate, but they said it was for like money reasons and whatnot. But obviously it's a bummer to see that kind of thing happen. But hopefully they do good. Montreal Washington, he started off last season as a good special teamer, for kick and punt returns, but kind of played less good, I guess, later in the season. But Riley Dixon's back with the Broncos. He had a good stint, but I don't know. I guess just question marks again, as always, for the Broncos.
Okay. Yep. I mean, Elliot Fry had his turn on the Bears when they were trying out like 9 different kickers. Like it was like Augusta. I'll never forget that. But he was one of the finalists for our kickers. So the fact that he's still kicking around in the league, no pun intended, he'll be a good fit for the Broncos. I think you're not going to lose much. Obviously, McManus can nail 63-yarders. I don't know if Elliot Fry can do that on a regular basis, but to kick your 30-yarders, your 20-yarders, I think he is perfectly fine. Alrighty, let's talk Chargers. I'm gonna pull up the record base over here, and we're gonna discuss our thoughts. So I actually have them winning the division this year. I think they have enough what it takes. I think the move to go to Kellen Moore is going to be the real difference maker. It's why I have them splitting with the Chiefs. And the only teams they're losing to are going to be the Broncos once, shocker, once the Bills, and to the Ravens. But I'm curious to see why you have them losing to particular teams, especially like I think you had them losing to the Titans, the Cowboys, and the Bears. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think at least with the teams in this division, it's a lot of like potentially similar teams. Obviously, I hope the Broncos play a little bit better than last year. But yeah. But in regards to I guess the teams that they're facing, I feel like it's hard to count out the Titans a lot of times. I mean, they didn't finish the season as good as you'd hope for, but they're obviously dealing with a lot of injuries, and so if they come back healthy, it's a hard team to stop. Especially in the beginning of the season, I think that might be where they're strongest, especially if injuries do end up hurting them later down the stretch. And so, I think this is a potential game that the Chargers can lose, and then see Cowboys. I don't think that they'll do great necessarily this season, but I think they have pieces on that offense and defense that can really give any team a run for their money. And so again, like the Chargers obviously could easily win these games, but I think that these are like those two are at least are good teams. And then see the Bears one was just one of those where I'm like it's a game that any given Sunday, and I was like, the Bears are that any given Sunday for the Chargers.
What are you trying to say?
I mean, I feel like the Chargers, they have, they get complacent. You're like, oh, we got the Bears next, regardless of their record. There's like, oh, the Bears, they're maybe the fraud good team, or they just suck. But the Bears are like, nah, we in this. You don't have an answer for Fields. You might stop the rest of the offense, but Fields is the man. And through that, they get a embarrassing loss, and then they end up just doing really good the rest of the
season. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope the Bears beat the Chargers, but I think from a talent level perspective, especially with like the coaching changes they made now, this is still like one of the teams to they could beat anybody. Like I could easily see them sweeping the Chiefs. That's how good I think this team is. And while I have them splitting against the Chiefs, there's not many teams where I see them losing to. Even with the new look Dolphins, I see them beating them. Even the newfound Jets, I see the Chargers winning that. There's just so much of offensive firepower they built around Justin Herbert that's going to be the difference in this game. Because Justin Herbert is that dude. He should be considered one of the top 5 QBs in the NFL, and I think this season will prove that. Plain and simple. Alrighty, that was pretty quick. Let's jump onto the offensive depth chart. Okay, so pulling them up right now. Corstian, I want to give your thoughts on what do you think about this roster, like especially from the offensive end. Like, the tight ends stand out to you? What about the wide receivers? Now that they got Quentin Johnson, well, how does this depth chart shape up?
Yeah, so for this Chargers, I guess, receiver core, I mean, when you get Quentin Johnston, you just basically drafted another Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Maybe his route running isn't as good as these guys, but it's quite literally getting the same type of build with this dude. And I feel like that's as simple as you can put it for them. You're getting a new Mike Williams here.
He could be a combination of both.
Yeah, and so I feel like this is maybe what the Chargers like. They like their big-bodied receivers that can basically out-physical just opposing teams' defensive backs. And so, you get arguably one of the better, big-bodied guys that was talked about as a first, second-round type player, and you get him in the first, and I think, right? And then
yeah, they got him.
And then you just kind of stick with that as your overall game plan in this offense. And a lot of teams try to get dynamic with their wide receivers, but I think this is what the Chargers like, and this is what they'll stick with. And I mean, it's worked for them so far, and so I don't see why they don't continue with this. And you got even like Joshua Palmer, who I think he falls into that kind of bigger-bodied player, right? Unless I'm stupid.
Yeah. I think it's 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah. Let's see. He's 6'1", which is, I guess, technically small for their receiver core, but again, it's still a bigger than average wide receiver that you see in the normal NFL that are like 5'10" to 6 feet tall, and so you got a lot of big bodies, and then you have a lot of just varying talent in that tight end room as well. You got Gerald Everett, who again he's a big body receiver. Donald Parham Jr., who is another, he's bigger body receiving tight end, or he's more than just receiving tight end, but you kind of get the point with that offense is just get a bunch of big guys that can catch it up, and then you have Austin Eckler underneath basically as you're making your kind of shiftier route runner, who I guess Keenan Allen can technically do, but it kind of gives them a little bit more, I guess, dynamic feel on that offense. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally get your reasoning. Don't have too much to add beyond that. I'd be interested to see how Jamari Salyer plays. He's probably the weak link on this team because their dynamicism, like you mentioned, from their running backs to their wide receivers to tight end is just elite. Their running back room is 3 deep, I think, and if you even think their Roundtree is really good, then it's 4 deep. But I think Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller can definitely spell for Austin Eckler. Palmer proved he can step up as a starting wide receiver when counted on. Guyton can still take the top off the defense. Keelan Doss shined a little bit when he was on the Raiders, so that was a sneaky good pickup to get him. And their tight end room is just a rotation. Like Donald Parham had a lot of buzz coming last year. Trey McKitty can do some good things, and their offensive line starters are really good. So we'll see. Not much too much add here. Quarterback might be a little bit shaky. Just kidding. He's one of the elite. He's one of the elite. You have to if you're going based on what Justin Herbert has accomplished, he's not elite. But if you actually watch him play, some of the throws he made, just turn on the tape. I think it was 2021 when they're facing the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they were Oakland at the time. They could have been Las Vegas. And just to keep them in the game, even though it ended up being a Raiders win, just to keep the Chargers in the game, I'm like 3 or 4 fourth down conversions on that same possession. Like that dude, once I saw that, I instantly knew he was elite. Even overlooking his rookie season. So don't count these Chargers out. They're one of the playoff favorites to come out of the conference because of this quarterback, in my opinion. So I definitely have them winning the division, and their offense is the reason. Okay, shifting gears. I'm going to pull up the defense in a second.
Okay.
All right, and you should be able to see that clearly.
Yep.
Some changes here. They added Eric Kendricks, and then obviously another season where we have Asante Samuel, J.C. Jackson, and Derrick James in the same team. What stands out to you about this roster?
I think this team has a lot of front end talent. I feel like that's undeniable. But despite that, I feel like their defense was really hit or miss last season. Again, I think that goes just back to how strong their depth is, and obviously they might have pretty solid depth, but just like I don't necessarily recognize too many of their depth players. Which, despite being a huge AFC West fan, it's kind of more so like there's probably a couple of good guys here, but it's not like overwhelmingly, oh wow, this team has great depth. And so I think that's kind of it's the weakness of this defense, because I feel like you have, I mean, a lot of phenomenal starters. Your pass rushers, you have Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. It's like, how many better duos in the league are there than those two players? But if Joey Bosa gets hurt or Khalil Mack gets hurt, like, do you really trust their backups to apply consistent pressure on quarterbacks and, I guess terrorize teams? Because I feel like it's most teams in the league at least try to invest in their pass rush talent just, so they can have guys coming in on rotations and keeping a lot of their pass rush fresh. But I feel like those guys, I mean, I haven't really taken a deep dive into their backup defensive pass rushers, but again, it doesn't like, I guess, ring any bells in my head of saying, oh wow, these are guys I got to watch out for. But again, it's like, how much do you want to invest in, I guess, when you're spending so much money on Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack as your two starters?
Valid points. I'd say if you look at the backup inside linebackers, they're good there, like with Nick Neiman and Dion Henley. I was a little bit worried once they lost Drew Tranquil because he was such a great tackler for them on that team last year. But I think they were okay in the inside linebackers. And backup quarterback to J.C. Jackson, Michael Davis is underrated. They use him a lot in like nickel and dime packages, and he's been very effective for them. I think he could step up if one of their cornerbacks gets hurt. The only question I would have in the starters is Alohi Gilman. I don't know too much about him, but you have valid points on the depth of the defense. Not too many questions there.
Yeah, I'm pulling up Alohi Gilman right now. He is a 2020 draft pick in the 6th round. And then in his career, let's see. I mean, he's making tackles. Looks like he was a starter last season for them.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see. He had 0 interceptions, right? No, I don't remember. Where does it say? Oh no, he has had 2 career interceptions. I mean, interceptions aren't everything, obviously, for a player. There's a lot of great defensive backs that get like barely any interceptions, and just because they're not targeted. But again, I don't think he's on that level of defensive back, but I feel like he is a okay impact player. Yeah, he had 58 total tackles. Seems like he's a contributor, not the best, and I don't think you need him to be the best player on your team. Especially when you got guys like Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson in your secondary. And again, it's like, do you cut back on spending on some of those other players and just get like 2 mid safeties, or would you rather have 1 superstar and 1 kind of just maybe below average starter,
Yeah, and it also goes back to the coach too, on how he envisions the scheme. Like, does he want Derwin James as a star position, which would make the most sense? Or does he want J.C. Jackson playing that role sometimes, even though he's like best as the outside cornerback? And like sometimes when you're playing a lot of zone, you just need those players to fill their responsibilities in the zone. And Gilman seems like he's one of those players. So um, PFF doesn't have it highly ranked either. So that would be my one area of concern with the Chargers. But like, if you have Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, Asante Samuel Jr., Kenny Murray, Eric Kendricks, Joey Bosa, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, like all on the roster surrounding him, I think you got a pretty good defense. They're just some notable flaws when it comes back to the really good teams. Like, how much can they be protected by? So that would be the one concern I would have.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree with that. And it's like not like there's very few teams that I feel like have their entire defense is capable starters. I feel like Eagles might be the closest to that in terms of a defense where every position is a guy that you can trust. Maybe nickel corner is a weakness now because they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but outside of that, it's like there's very few teams in the league that I feel like have this level of talent at each of their starting positions on a defense.
Yeah, I'd probably say Buffalo is the one other team I would add. But yeah, you're exactly right. There's going to be flaws in every team. And in this case, they're really banking on the pass rush to get here and the outside cornerbacks to do their jobs. So we'll see. They have the offensive talent to make this work, though. I will say that.
Yep.
Okay, shifting on to the Raiders, last team in the AFC West. Obviously, you know how much Corstian loves this team.
Boo!
And you know how much I love this team as well. We have them as the best finishers in the AFC West at a combined record of 7-27.
Yeah.
Corstian, tell us how much you love this team and how favorable their schedule is.
Initially I was like, Raiders don't win a single game this season. But kind of like how with the Broncos, I feel like that would have been slightly uninteresting content. And so I was like, maybe they sneak in a win here and there, but like really, really, really barely squeezing it by. It's just like one of those games where Devontae Adams would just like go unstoppable beast mode, and Josh Jacobs became like the best running back of all time for like a couple games, And so I do think they eke out a win, like a few wins here and there. And yeah, I feel like they'll just have a couple games in the season where they play good football. Have no idea when that'll be, but like obviously I didn't put them winning against any like super elite talent. I feel like the best team I have them. I mean, I guess I have them beating the Giants and the Jets, but I feel like those two teams could be one of those where they're pretty good, but they could drop a dumb game here and there. And so that's the only reason why I had them losing or winning those games there. And I feel like that's the same with the other teams that I have them winning against. It's just kind of like one of the any given Sunday type games,
Honestly, I wanted to put them as 0-17 when I looked at the list of teams they faced. I really did, because I'm looking like Steelers on the way up, and I think they're gonna improve tremendously with the additions they've had. So I didn't have them beating them. This is one of the few games I would have given Green Bay, like beating the Raiders on, because I think top to bottom, Green Bay has the better roster. Even New England, I think New England has a better roster, and even the Colts, like I think with Anthony Richardson, which I'm super high on, by the time he gets acclimated in the season, he's gonna be good enough to like take on the Raiders, who like I don't know what the heck they're doing on that front. So, but I decided to be lenient. I think they're definitely capable of beating the Packers, the Patriots, even the Giants, and I will say the Bears as well, and the Vikings and the Colts. Like I could see this as a 6 or 7 win team, like that's their ceiling, but it's heavily reliant on their pass rushers and Max Crosby, and I forget his name, Jones, the pass rusher, Chandler Jones. like heavily capable on those two, and then Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, and you lost Darren Waller. So now you're saying, okay, how much does Hunter Renfrow get used? How much does Jacoby Myers get used? You lost both your starting two tight ends. So what's going to happen there? There's a lot of unanswered questions like on this team, and now we have one more with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I have no idea what's going to happen with this team. Tom Brady's totally going to come back. He's going to start for them, and then we'll see what goes on from there.
Imagine that.
Yeah. I mean, if he starts, they're going 17-0 the rest of the way.
Yeah, with Josh
even
McDaniels.
with 11 games to go, they're going 17-0.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we pretty much agree on like the outlook on this team. We're not very confident in them, but let's take a look at their offensive defensive depth charts. More specifically, when I look at this team personally, they have a really good offensive line. The really good
Mhm.
offensive line, in my opinion. Really good like top end talent where even the depth chart in the running backs is solid. Where you have Josh Jacobs, Amir
Mhm.
White, Amir Abdullah. Um, then I like their backup wide receivers a lot. And DeAndre Carter, he flashed for the Chargers. Keelan Cole, he's always flashed everywhere he went. The tight end room is really good, in my opinion. It's just the coaching. Like how is this team going to be used? Because this team has so much of potential to be like a pass-oriented attack when you had Darren Waller and Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow.
Mhm.
And that's kind of just like a mix. Like, are you committing heavy to the run? Why is Hunter Renfrow still on the roster in that case? Like, it's kind of confusing to me.
Mhm. Yeah. And then, like, I think like the big concern, I guess, for this off season for the Raiders is, will Jimmy Garoppolo be a quarterback on the Raiders roster come week 1? So obviously, Raiders fans are hoping for that. I mean, they didn't even want that in the beginning of the offseason when, all the quarterbacks are flying around everywhere. Raiders are like, oh, we're getting one of the superstar quarterbacks. And they saw in the news, oh, Raiders got a new quarterback. And then they saw it was Jimmy Garoppolo of all people. And they're like, wait, what? Like, all of our off-season hopes just out the window. And now all the quarterbacks are basically gone. And now Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't pass the physical. And he might not even be on the roster, And what are you going to do? Start Brian Hoyer come week 1? You sign Cam Newton out of free agency? Like what is the Raiders' backup plan besides Brian Hoyer for a quarterback if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't play for them?
I think, yeah, a
I
lot of
hope he
good
doesn't
points.
play.
A lot of good points. It's going to be a lot of inexperience despite like Brian Hoyer being there for so long. I will say this: Aiden O'Connell, sorry, out of Purdue, has a lot of talent. He does have a lot of talent. He can make all the throws. He's a very smart player.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that he doesn't have the high end athletic trait to look for in like the top elite quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a very systematic QB. I can see him like fit in the mold of a Jarrett Stidham where he has a couple good games, but I don't know. Like I don't know what this front office's plan is. I don't know what the coach's plan is because these are all like solid like options that they have in the dynamic position groups they got going on. But I just don't trust the coaching to maximize their talent based on what I've seen in the previous season. So I could be wrong. For all I know, this team is gonna win the division. Like I've been burned before. But they got the offensive line to do it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like the rest of the pieces, like mainly like Jacoby Myers to like Austin Hooper down. Like, what are we doing? Like trying to surround Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the defense. So obviously, I really like their front four. Like, I think they have a really solid front four.
Mm-hmm.
They got some work to do. I would say like in the linebackers and cornerbacks, but I think the pass rush is really like what they're banking on, like being their focal point. But do you see something else? How do you see this defense shaping up over the course of the year?
Yeah, I think that Chandler Jones does need a bounce back season because obviously, paid a lot of money to get him, And last offseason, there was like a huge, I guess, rush to try to get the top pass rush talent. You know, Von Miller was in free agency. Chandler Jones was there. Randy Gregory, where there was those were the three main like hot commodity pass rush talents, and you pay a lot of money for him. He plays kind of underwhelming, and obviously Max Crosby on the other side is phenomenal. You know, he's a great talent. He, in all honesty, by himself probably is almost good enough to be like your premier player on your defensive line, but um, especially because you are paying Jones so much, you don't have, I guess, as much investment in the other players on that defense, and I guess it kind of shows just with overall depth and quality of player that you see, um, which I think is going to be a big cause as to a lot of their losses is, they can't just their defense can't make enough stops in games, and especially late in the game when if it's a shootout, your defense is going to be tired. If you're not having great talent all around, then it's going to be hard to make that, clutch fourth quarter stop or, make that third and short, it's like, what can you do? And um, it just, yeah, I think while their offense, like we said earlier, had a lot of sound players, really good offensive line, I feel like because they invested so much in their offense, you see a lot of, I guess, the lack of talent on that defense, which will most likely be their demise, if anything, if they can't win out shootout, if they can't just do a shootout every game.
Yeah, and like take into account, like I thought Tyree Wilson was really good pickup, so like that even strengthens their their front four a lot. But um, I'm just looking at like the linebackers. And I'm like Devon Diablo, good player, undersized though. Robert Spillane, like he's a solid player. Luke Masterson, I don't know too much about him. Nate Hobbs had some flashes. Marcus Epps had some flashes for the Eagles. Um, Morwick's a good player. Um, Duke Shelley was okay on the Bears. I don't know what is he doing in the slot role. I would not have him there. Personally, I thought Amik Robertson did okay last year, so I'm not sure why he's not starting. But it's just like it's a mixed bag, like outside of the front four. Where I feel like if you have a QB that can make quick decisions with the amount of like talent that they're facing from the league QBs on their schedule,
Mhm.
like this pass rush could be easily neutralized for
Mhm.
however elite it is.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like this defense is a lot of we want to win now players mixed in with a lot of we're trying to develop these guys in the middle of a rebuild type players, and it's like you gotta pick what you're doing on
Make up your
defense
mind, yeah. And
because
like
yeah.
Chargers, I expected because you have Justin Herbert, so you can kind of build it where like you can just like go all in on your front four. But this team, like you don't know what your future is. You're like hoping Jimmy G is that guy based on production and record,
Mhm.
but he's first got to be on the team. So like
Yeah.
there's just a lot of confusion. There's no like concrete plan or like backup plans they have that really have me believing in this team like beating teams with better talent and better depth. So
Mhm.
that's the issue I have. Um, Hopefully, if they get Caleb Williams and Drake May, it would solve the majority of their problems because that's how we
Yeah.
schedule them right now. We're having them as like one of the bottom five teams in the league.
Yeah. I can't imagine too many teams doing worse than the record that we gave the Raiders.
100%,
Yeah, but
100%.
knowing the Raiders, they'd have like the number one overall pick and like draft an offensive tackle or something and mess it up. But not even
And
like the
that
best tackle.
and that's your Broncos fans' take on his own division. We
Yeah.
hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. A bit of a longer one today since we're opening up the series on the divisions. Let us know
Yeah.
what you think. Um, for all we know, we could be completely wrong. And the Raiders end up winning the division, winning the Super Bowl, and then we just all look like fools and stop doing this podcast altogether. But do you agree with our predictions? Do you agree with what's going to happen in this NFL season? We'll have lots of polls. We'll have lots of coverage of the games, like on the Instagram story. So speaking of which, if you want to try and follow us on Instagram, you can follow us at amon.a.mission on
Hmm.
Instagram. Again, that's at amon.a.mission. Um, Let us know in the comments what you want to see next. Don't forget to like and subscribe
Hmm.
and offer feedback on what we could do better, what you like seeing, and hope you guys have a good day. See you guys
Yeah.
later.
Peace.